Unit 2, problem post number 2, multi-step equations. This video's guest of honor will be a woman in a big dress. Alright, so solving multi-step equations is one of the most important skills to have in Algebra 1. I can't stress enough the importance of having fluency in this particular skill. So to solve multi-step equations, what we need to do is isolate this variable. Get this variable all alone on one side of the equation. To do that, we're going to use our properties of equality or inverse operations. Every time we use one, we're going to write down the one we used next to that line of math. Okay, so we have this x. Immediately it's being multiplied by the 2. Whenever you see the number right in front of the variable, that implies multiplication. This is 2x, this is 2 times x. And then we're adding 6. We call the 2 the coefficient because it's the number being multiplied by the variable. We're going to call 6 the constant. When you have a two-step equation set up like this, what we want to do is first remove the constant and then divide by the coefficient. So to eliminate this constant, I'm adding 6. I need to do the opposite of adding 6, the inverse of adding 6. So I'm going to subtract 6 because negative 6 is the opposite of positive 6. Whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do it to the other side as well. So I'm subtracting 6 from the left, and I'm also subtracting 6 from the right. This is my subtraction property of equality. The 6 and the negative 6 cancel out. They are eliminated now, just like I wanted to. And I'm only left with the 2x. So now I'm one step closer to x being by itself. I'm one step closer to isolating the variable. 22 minus 6, 16. Okay, so by doing minus 6 to both sides, I used my subtraction property. Subtraction property. So this is me justifying my work. I'm allowed to say this because of the subtraction property of equality. Now I need to eliminate the 2 that's being multiplied by the x. I have to eliminate a coefficient. To eliminate a coefficient, we can divide by that coefficient. So I'll divide this side of the equation by 2, and that will eliminate the 2 that's being multiplied by the x. And I'll be left with just x. Since I divided the left-hand side by 2, I also need to divide the right-hand side of the equation by 2 as well. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And this is my division property. And x is equal to 8 is my final answer. I've isolated the variable. There's nothing else being added or subtracted, multiplied or divided. 2x. Number 2 is going to be the same type of equation in that it's going to take us 2 steps to get to our answer. But in this case, we have some decimals. And that can make it a little bit more challenging just because the numbers may seem a little bit unfamiliar. But it's fine. As long as we use our properties of equality and follow our step-by-step process, we'll isolate x and have our answer. So here I'm subtracting 2.75. This is my constant. I need to eliminate this first. So I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to add 2.75 to the left. And since I did that, I have to add 2.75 to the right as well. So now the 2.75s will cancel each other out, and I'll be left with just 0.5x. And don't sweat it if you got some fractions or decimals, because we have a calculator in Algebra 1 that can do the calculation for us. So we just simply put in 3.98 plus 2.75, and we get 6.73. Since we added 2.75 to both sides of the equation, this is my addition property. Now I have to eliminate the coefficient. Since 0.5 is being multiplied by x, I'm going to do the opposite and divide. Since I divide the left, I need to divide the right as well. On the left, they're eliminated, and I'm left with just x. And now I have to take this 6.73 and divide it by 0.5. And interestingly enough, we actually increase in value. So we'll get 13.46. And that was our division property because we divided both sides of the equation by the same amount. And my answer. Number 3 gets a little bit harder because now we have x terms on both sides of the equation. Whenever we have x terms on both sides of the equation, we simply need to just make the decision in the beginning of which side we want our x terms on and which side we want our numbers on. Traditionally, we like our final answer to be variable on the left and number on the right, x equal to some value. So I'm going to decide that I want my x terms on the left and I want numbers on the right. Since I want only x terms on the left, I need to eliminate any constants, any numbers that are on the left. So I see this positive 4 here. I'm going to eliminate that by subtracting 4 to both sides. Remember, you can only combine like terms when using properties of equality. So I'm going to line up my minus 4 underneath the 19. So over here, the 4 and the negative 4 cancel out, and I'm left with 3x. 10x is going to stay exactly the same, but negative 19, I'm taking 4 away from that, so I'll be at minus 23. I subtracted 4 from both sides, so this is my subtraction property. From here, since I determined I wanted only my x terms on the left, I need to eliminate any x terms I see on the right. I see this 10x. I don't want it there, so I'm going to eliminate it by doing the opposite of 10x, which is negative 10x. 3 minus 10 will be negative 7. And then that's equal to negative 23. And this is my subtraction property again. Finally, we have some value being multiplied by the x. We call this the coefficient. To eliminate the coefficient, I'm going to divide by it. In this case, 23 is not divisible by 7. So I know a negative divided by a negative will yield a positive. So I'm just going to leave this fraction as 23 over 7. And that was my division property. And x is equal to 23 over 7. If you wanted to, you could represent that as a decimal answer, 23 over 7. It's an infinite decimal. It does have a pattern, so this is a rational value. Remember, from our rational unit, we discussed that if it can be expressed as a fraction of integers, it's rational. But it's better to leave it in fraction form so we have the exact answer. We don't have to round anything. And this is in simplest terms. If I hit math, enter, enter, convert it to a fraction, it just leaves it as 23 over 7. So this is our best answer. Okay, moving on to number 4. We get a little bit more complicated again by having to combine some like terms before we're able to use our properties of equality. Meaning we need to use the distributive property and combine like terms on each side of the equation first, and then we can start doing things to both sides of the equation. So I'll start with distributing. If I see a number outside a quantity, I'm going to multiply that number by everything within the parentheses. So this will give me 3x minus 12. The plus 2x will come down. Equals, now I'm going to take this negative 2 and distribute it into this group of parentheses. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 6, I have a negative times a negative, that gives me a positive. And 2 times 6 is 12. And then my plus 20 will come down. This is distributive property. So I've used my distributive property. I distributed everything into the groups of parentheses. Now I have some like terms that need to be combined. For example, 3x and 2x, those are like terms. I want to combine them. 3 plus 2 is 5, so this will give me 5x. Over here I have a 12 and a 20. Those can combine to a 32. The negative 2x will come down, and these two will combine to a 32. Here I've combined like terms, so I'll say combine like terms. So I'm justifying my steps. All right, now we have all the like terms combined. We can start using our properties of equality, inverse operations, to start eliminating some of these terms that we don't want. I like to have my x terms on the left, my numbers on the right, which means I need to eliminate any x terms I see on the right. I see this negative 2x. I need to eliminate that because I only want x terms on the left. The opposite of negative 2x is positive 2x. So I'll add 2x to both sides. That'll give me 7x. Negative 2x and positive 2x cancel out. and I'm left with just 32. I've added the 2x to both sides, so this is my addition property. Since I moved all my x terms to the left, I need to eliminate any numbers I have on the left. I need to eliminate negative 12. The opposite of negative 12 is positive 12. 7x will come down. Negative 12 and positive 12 cancel out. 32 plus 12 is 44. And I've added again, so this again will be my addition property. And finally, we have to eliminate the 7 to isolate x. It's a coefficient. I will divide by this coefficient. And oh man, this dividing by 7. So 44 over 7 is about as simple as it's going to get. And that will be division property. So we could always check to make sure the fraction can't be simplified anymore. See, another infinite decimal. It has a pattern, but I want the exact answer on my paper, so I'm not going to round. Math, enter, enter, converts it to a fraction, and 44 over 7 is lowest terms, so I'll leave it as such. All right, and there's my results. So we actually solved the problem here with a lot of steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps it took us to get that answer. But that's okay. As long as we just apply our properties of math, we'll get there. Number 5 kicks it up a notch again because fractions. Nobody likes fractions, right? But I'm going to use the same process, the same algorithm we call it. I'm going to move all my x terms to the left. I'm going to get only numbers on the right, and then I can divide by my coefficient. But this time, since it's fractions, I might end up multiplying by the reciprocal. We'll talk more about that when we get there. So I only want x terms on the left. I notice I have 7/5 x over here. I'm going to do the opposite to get rid of that. Subtract 7/5 x. 2/3 minus 7/5. That might be a difficult calculation. So let's go to our calculator. I'm going to put in a fraction, alpha f1, enter. 2/3 minus another fraction, alpha f1, enter. 7/5. And we get negative 11/15. So it is what it is. Negative 11/15 x minus 5 over 4, that comes down, equal to 1/2. Okay, so I've removed all of my x terms from the right. Now I need to remove all numbers, all constants from the left. Got to get rid of this negative 5/4. I'm going to do the opposite of that, which is add 5/4. So I have negative 11 over 15x. That's just coming down. These are eliminated. And then 1/2 plus 5/4. We can do 1/2 and then plus alpha f1, enter, 5 over 4, and we get 7/4. Okay, so from here we have two options. We can either do what we have been doing and using our division property, dividing by this coefficient, or others like to use the multiplication property by multiplying by the reciprocal. A reciprocal is like the upside down version of a fraction, and that will eliminate this. So I'm going to do that just to change it up a bit, learn something new. I'm going to multiply by negative 15 over 11. So I took this fraction and I just flipped it upside down, and that's what I multiply by. What we need to do here, what our goal is to make this into a 1. That's why like up here when we divided by 7, 7 divided by 7 is 1, and 1 times x is just x. So we effectively eliminate any coefficient. The same thing happens when we multiply by the reciprocal. If we notice in the numerator, we'll have 15 times 11 as our top number, and we're dividing that by the bottom, which is 11 times 15. No, not tangent, parentheses. And we get a 1. So by multiplying by the reciprocal, we just get a 1 in front of x, and that allows us to eliminate the coefficient. Now I just need to do this other side here, 7 over 4 times negative 15 over 11. So 7 over 4, and I'll multiply that by negative 15 over 11. and we get negative 105 over 44. And that is our result. I realize I did not write my properties over to the side here to justify my work, so let's double back and take care of it. We started out by subtracting 7 over 5x. That was subtraction property. Then we had to add the 5 over 4 to both sides. That was addition property. And finally, we multiplied by the reciprocal. This was our multiplication property. Okay, so just follow the steps, use the properties, stay within the laws of mathematics, and linear equation solving should be pretty straightforward. Be sure to fill out a self-assessment, number 1 through 4, assessing your ability to solve multi-step equations after watching the video.